Oh, maybe it just went straight to live. It didn't even give us a countdown timer. Okay, well, I'm not gonna cut us out of here. So, hey, welcome to today's episode. We're gonna talk about habits today. Me and licensed counselor Molly Roth. My name is Sam. I'm actually a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach here in Central Texas.
And I'm Molly Roth. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Texas, and I'm also a functional nutritional therapy practitioner all over the world. And my focus is just helping people live healthier lives.
I love that. I love that. Well, you guys, we're super excited to have you here today. I'm super excited to have Molly here joining me because it's going to give us an amazing opportunity to really, what we want to focus on today. And our focus today is going to be habits. And I believe habits are just, I want to really define habits for yourself. Because I had to look up the definitions, like, what is the definition of a habit? And it talks about habits are actually moves that are, oh, dang, let me make sure I get the right quote for you here, guys. I'm hey, what is it? Dang. Habits are, things that we do each and every day repeatedly over and over. So what would you define a habit as, Molly?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of even want to back up a little bit further because I think we sometimes want to just start with the habits, right? And I see the habits really is like the how. It's like you said, the small daily steps. But even zooming out more, we have these wider view goals, right? And then we even at the beginning of the year, we're about to hit January, we widen out even more, and we talk about resolutions, right? And the way I look at this is our resolution is our firm decision to want to make change, right? And I think all of us get to the new year and we are ready for something to change. We're ready for weight loss. We're ready for quitting, a habit that we don't like, right? Like smoking or drinking or whatever, right? And then, a lot of us want to start there. But I think you kind of need all three when we're thinking about ultimately changing our habits. We need the firm decision that we want to make change. We need the goals, which is really that kind of sight. It's like where we're pointing, our compass. And then the habits are the daily little steps that we take, the daily changes that we make in our life, right? Those simple, just I'm going to choose to have coffee instead of having, that mimosa on a weekend, right? It's that small little step towards that greater vision.
Man, I really love how you broke that down into three categories. Because, it is it's very easy to dive in and look at the habits, but I love how you said it's really down to those decisions that we get to make. And I really love that because, like we talked about, habits are those repeated behaviors that we do over and over. But really, it comes down to those decisions and those goals that we ultimately have.
Yeah. I'm curious. We're hitting the new year. What is a resolution, goal, habit that you may have?
Oh, well, that's a great question because I had to really think about that. It's really funny because one of the main goals for myself was to just really simplify the process that I'm already doing. I found myself torn in so many directions last year that I not really mastering anything. And I think it's very simple. Like one of my habits was just to simplify things. And when I really love how you broke things down into three separate categories because I realized I was making too many decisions, but not really having that goal of the direction I really wanted to go. And I realized it's a bad habit. It's just I was setting myself for randomness, and I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why we need to have a goal. We need to have that long range vision of where we're trying to go. Because I think using the example of losing weight, a lot of people are like, I need to make a change. I need to lose 50 pounds, and this is going to be the year that happens for me. Right. But they don't think of like, okay, but why do I want to lose that weight? Right. Like, what is the goal that I'm trying to get to? Is it because my sister has a wedding and I want to fit into the wedding dress? Is it because I'm single and I really want to land that partner this year and I want to make myself more desirable? Right. Like, we have to have, that why that's driving the big decision of wanting to lose weight. And then let's say it's because, there's a wedding, we want to lose the weight, right? what are going to be the small habits that I'm going to have to take to break that down to achieve that goal. Because I mean, the habits aren't the goals. The habits are those kind of lifestyle, daily small steps that we take towards, the ultimate goal that we're trying to achieve.
Yes, yes, I love that. I love how you really talked about, having that awareness before we are looking to really change our lives. Like I love how you said you need to have that destination ultimately, which is the goal, I believe. I mean, how many times would we want to go a place without really setting ourselves up? And I know what habits do at the end of the day. Our habits, when we have that goal, our habits should be in line with, our destination. Would you say, is that correct?
Absolutely. And I think too, we need to be more intentional about the resolutions, the goals, the habits that we are wanting to tackle for the new year, just so that we're setting ourselves up for success, and not just for the new year, but whenever we're trying to kind of set a goal or a habit for ourselves, just being intentional about that, asking ourselves, why do we want to make this change? Really, why? Because when things get really tough in our daily habits, that's the thing we're going to want to keep coming back to. That's going to keep us motivated. That's going to kind of keep that energy and that momentum going forward. And if our why is not good enough, or we don't even really even know why, or it's someone else's why, we're not going to stick with it. It's just human nature.
Man, I love that. I love that. I want to share a quote that I came to habits. It says, "A habit is just a behavior our brain learns to rely on." That quote, I was like, wow, how many habits have I truly been relying on and without really thinking about, are they serving me? Or Molly was talking about leading to the destiny towards my goal. And you heard that quote, Molly, I want to repeat that again. What does this make you think of? A habit is just a behavior your brain learned to rely on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the work I do in my mental health practice, a lot of people come to me because their goal their entire life was just survival, and the habits were in line with that goal of survival, and they've decided that they don't want that to be their goal of their entire life. They want to change and shift their goals, which means they're going to have to change and shift their habits. But a lot of us don't even realize that really the habits that we learned in childhood, especially if we had a particularly tough childhood, was to survive. If you had an environment where you were set up to thrive and you had, two parents and enough resources, maybe your goal was, a little bit different than other people. And those habits probably aligned with that, right? So I think it just kind of reminds me of that, of like, it's so important for us to have awareness of really what is the goal of, either our year or really where we want our life to go.
Man, I really love that. And I think, I've definitely found myself in that survival mindset, but I really love something you said that I think that's probably why when it comes to our goals and really habits of why they become so hard, because we've learned to rely so much on just survival or just getting by. But I love how you said that each day we can make that decision to really change the trajectory of where we want to go with our lives.
Yeah. And it starts with having the awareness that we want to make change, whether that's because we are in so much pain physically, emotionally, mentally, or we just decide one day that we want something that we don't have, right? Is but making that
Mm.
resolution from the awareness of something in my life isn't working the way that I want it to.
And I love that. And I really love, as we're on this topic of habits, I love how you're talking about, the habit change and, making that decision. But as we are stepping into this new year, I know many of us are the focus of our habits that really help us grow, right? So I know we talked about how those small habits create those big changes, but what would you say is any strategies? I know you to kind of really make sure we're focusing on habits that actually help grow, hold us back.
Yeah. I think when we kind of start with where we're wanting to go, that bigger picture, and kind of starting in that direction versus just focusing on the habits themselves, I think it's a bit easier to determine kind of what is a step towards that goal and what is a step away from it, because it should feel like natural progression. So for example, if my goal is I want to lose weight, you know, in my habits of what I'm eating, right? Like my diet, it's, you know, it's going to be pretty fluid of, okay, I wake up and, you know, I'm have a decision if I'm going to reach for the donut or if I'm going to reach for the overnight oats that I made, right? And that in itself, right, if I reach for the donut, that's a step away from my ultimate goal if I'm trying to lose weight, right? And eating maybe the overnight oats is a step forward. But also, you know, even if I eat the donut, maybe my step back towards my goal is I'm going to get a good workout in, right? And so I think even when sometimes our habits can be a little all over the place when we're starting out, we can always kind of keep our focus on that goal that directs our step each of the way, right? That directs each step towards that goal.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Because I think I love we really talked about setting the goal and letting post when it comes to your habits. Because I think many of us, like you said, we can find ourselves in random situations where we start to question, you know, how do we become to really truly trust ourselves after we've just been making decisions out of survival, like you talked about. But I love how you said that when we set that goal, we can start to really base our decisions and actions off of it. And I mean, we can really start to question ourselves, like, is this really moving me towards the ultimate goal, or is this really helping me step away? And I loved how you made the like the simple thing of like simple choices. I think many times when we look to change, we're looking for the biggest thing, right? Work, there has to be an explosion, and then everything's going to change. But I love how you said it really starts like those tiny micro decisions, whether I'm like, I'm going to take the stairs or the elevator. It can be just that simple that can really push you towards the ultimate goal. But it's those things repeatedly that really create change.
Yeah. And I think also breaking your goals down into micro goals. So, you know, if your goal is to lose 50 pounds, that may be hard to do daily, is having that in focus because it feels so far away. But if my first little goal is like, I'm going to lose 5 pounds or I'm going to lose 10 pounds, when, you know, you first start off on a weight loss journey, if you haven't been trying to lose weight, typically those pounds come off pretty quick, you know, especially if it's, you know, you're not having any chronic kind of health issues and you're kind of just the standard American diet. You know, when you just start kind of cleaning up your diet, a lot of times that weight kind of falls off very fast. And then, okay, you've met that first goal of 5 or 10 pounds. And then you're like, oh, I can do this, right? Like you start feeling empowered and that momentum kind of starts to build. And then maybe the next milestone is, you know, 20 pounds is, you know, so like 10 more pounds. And I think, you know, that even in itself can kind of help us in those moments where we may be struggling with a certain habit, right? Like maybe it's late night snacking and, you know, I'm kind of struggling with that, you know, mindset of like, oh, I really want this late night snack. But then you've hit that milestone and you're like, no, I can do this. It's only 10 more pounds. And that first 10 was so easy. I can do this, right? It can kind of help build up that motivation and that mindset of sticking to that goal. You know, so I think that just breaking the goals down into micro goals, and it doesn't have to be specifically that way, you know, maybe a micro goal if you're trying to lose weight is you have like a size jeans that are like a size smaller than you normally wear. And right, like that can be a goal in itself. There can be so many little micro goals that you set so that you're kind of having a win each time you meet that goal, and then you're building that momentum.
Man, I love that. I love that. And I 100% talked about building that momentum as you set those micro goals and you start building that confidence and trust in yourself. Really start to build that momentum. I love that. And I want to share a quote when it comes to kind of, you know, focusing on those habits that are moving us forward. And the quote says, helpful habits don't add pressure, they add support. Repeat that again. Healthy habits that are going to move you forward don't add pressure, but they add support to, like Molly said, the ultimate goal. Is that kind of what that quote made you feel like, Molly?
Yeah, Absolutely. I think the habit that is going to feel good is the one that we don't have to hide, the one that we're not ashamed of talking about, right?
Ooh.
Like, I know if I choose the donut over the overnight oats, I'm going to not want to tell anyone about that. Right?
So true, man. Were you watching me earlier? Did you
Yeah. I'm that habit that
love
I
something you said
yeah.
there? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Keep going.
No, but I love something you said there because that's so true. I think sometimes our habits, we tend to shame ourselves and be the biggest judges of ourselves. But I love something so powerful that you said right there is it's when you stick to your plan, when you start to honor yourself, you don't have to hide. And I think that's a super powerful point I don't want to be missed here. Because maybe on your journey, you feel so alone because you have been so afraid to choose the right thing for yourself. But when you make those mistakes, the first thing you think of is, I need to hide.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a powerful moment, like you said right there. I mean, we all have that moment where we're like, we didn't do it right, so I need to hide. And then that hiding becomes a cycle of I'm just going to keep making this mistake over and over again. But I love how you talked about, it's just making that next right choice. That you're not always going to make the right one. We don't know what we're going through. We don't know the seasons of change that we're going through. But I love how you talk about it's just making the next right choice and how that in itself can build that next step.
Yeah, I think through any kind of change process, we have to have so much grace for ourselves. And that, especially when it is a change that's been particularly hard for us, we have to give ourselves so much grace and even plan for the times where we're going to get off track, right? Like, have a plan in place when I maybe don't stick with the habit. I've planned for myself, like, this is how I'm going to get myself back on track, right? Maybe you have an accountability buddy that you check in with. Maybe, right, like if it's specifically food, right? It's like, I'm going to make sure I drink a lot of water. I'm going to make sure, not to punish yourself, but get your movement in, because that's like the best way, especially if it's something highly processed. It's the best way to get your digestion moving. It's the best way to help your blood sugar from spiking, right? Is just to get some movement in, right? That could be dancing for 20 minutes in your living room. But finding ways to get yourself back on path and planning for those moments when you're going to get off path, because we're human. I mean, that's going to happen. We are going to have a goal and make a mistake, and we just want to make sure that we are coming back to the road, coming back to our focus of that initial goal.
Yes, yes, so true. And I really love that fact that you said it's just letting go and realizing that we are human, that mistakes are going to happen, but each day, each opportunity we have, we can make that next right choice. And that's so powerful. It's about what habits are. We really focus on habits that serve us, but now we want to talk about letting go of habits that serve us. That's a hard part when it comes to anything. Is letting go is always like about maybe these habits want to have served us so long, we felt so comfortable doing them, but now we've really identified that this thing no longer serves me. I think one of the biggest things that I had to learn this last year is letting go is growth, and it's not a failure. I think it's so many times let things go, it tends to be like this, you failed, but realizing that sometimes letting go actually leads to not only bigger, better things, but it leads to growth.
Absolutely. I think about the caterpillar that, has to melt down into the goo before they become a butterfly, right? Letting go of all of those cells, letting go of their form, and kind of going this process where all their cells are reorganizing, and then they come out, right? This beautiful butterfly. But nobody talks about being in the goo, right? Nobody talks about that period of time where you don't know what's up and down and right from left, and you're just kind of trusting the process, right? You're kind of in that transition. But it starts right with the choosing that I want to do something different. I want to change a habit. I want to be a different person.
I love that. I love how you talk about, I like to call that the gooey part, that the messy middle part, and like you said, it's so never highlight it. Nobody really wants to talk about it, but you're right. It's like sometimes you don't know if you're going the right direction. It's like kind of like what you said right there. You are just gonna outgrowing that habit is a normal thing. Like you said, it's part of growth. That you're gonna find yourself in places where you don't know right from left, like you talked about. You don't know up from down, but that's simply part of the process of be better. Like you said, that's the process of the caterpillar, which I think is a beautiful definition of how life is. Right? We are all in these different seasons of change, and that growth is part of that process. And that to think we're going to be able to escape it is
Yeah. And I think that before any of those habits and goals can even be set, like we have to believe that we can become that person, because our habits that we have now align with the way we view ourselves. And if we don't believe it's possible for us to show up and be a different person, it's going to be hard to make those changes because we don't truly even believe that we can be that person, And so part of it is an internal shift that needs to happen, that I believe that I can become or I can become the butterfly, right? I believe it is possible for me to become a different person. And if there's a block to believing that, that will definitely impact the ability to stick with the habit changes and maybe even setting the goal for yourself.
Ooh, you guys, right there was something, man, Molly, that was so powerful what you said right there. Is our habits are in line with how we view ourselves. I think it's a great thing for you to dial in right now and visualize the habits that you have right now. Are they in line with the person that you want to be? Or is that the very person that's holding you back, man, Molly? That is such a powerful thing. And I really want people to really hear that, because I believe that is one of the major keys to change, is like Molly said right there, is how you see yourself. Not how people tell you you are, not how people told you, but how I said it so powerful. There's your habits that you have right now are in line with the person you see yourself as. And I mean, if you were to just leave here, that would change your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because that comes down to, how do I feed myself, right? Like, do I exercise? Do I ask for the raise at work? Do I speak up for myself, right? All of those small decisions that we make in our daily life really represent how we feel about ourselves, right? What we think we're worth, our self-concept. And when we decide that we want to become more, that we want different from ourselves, we literally are shedding the skin of that old self-concept, and we are taking habits and steps to support that new version of ourselves, right? We are going into the goo when we're making those changes to come out of that as the person that we want to be, as the person who, can speak up for themselves, as the person who, does lift weights, as the person who prioritizes your diet and your health, right? We're literally shedding the skin of who we used to be to become who we want to be.
Ooh, man. Mic drop. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. And I want you to hear that, like, in that same sense, like Molly was saying, that's how we let go of our habits without judging ourselves. It's exactly like that. It's how you start to envision yourself as that butterfly going through the process of growth. But like she said, giving yourself grace through the process. I think many times we're told that it should be done a certain way and it should be look a certain way, but realizing that your journey is your journey, and that is a powerful statement in itself. And I want to share a quote when it comes to just really, changing those goals. It says, "Not every habit is bad. Some are just outdated. You don't need to shame a habit to release." I think that's a powerful statement in itself, because I know for myself, I had many habits that are outdated. I don't want to talk about, because I'm like, I don't talk about it, but you don't have to shame a habit to release it. That it's like Molly said, it's really visualizing the person you want to become and then taking the next right step to make it happen.
Absolutely. And we can't shame the former version of ourselves that didn't know better. But now that we do know better and we want more for ourselves, right? We're going to allow that change to happen with compassion for the former version of ourselves that didn't know.
Ooh. Okay, guys. I'll leave you guys with for this one. I want to give you a question for just something to really marinate on after all that knowledge Molly gave us. What is that habit mentally, emotionally, or physically? Would you think that's a good question to ask ourselves as we are moving towards our habits, Molly?
Yeah, absolutely. And if there is like a goal or resolution you're really kind of fixated on, how can you break that down into the small habits that are going to get you towards that?
Whew. Yes, yes, you guys, man. Oh, that is awesome. That is now that we really talked about, letting go of those habits and I really want to talk about replace, but like talk about with compassion.
Say that one more time.
And I think when it really comes, I'm sorry about that. Now I want to talk about replacing habits with compassion. And I really think curiosity works better than just controlling the habit, right? We want it to be all in control. Just having that curiosity and realizing that things need to be replaced. And that's still a journey of discovery in itself, would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah, because I think when we are taking inventory of our lives, that a lot of us do come into a lot of shame, right? Because there may be a habit that we've been doing, over and over and over again, and we know it's not good for us, but we feel like it has control and power over us, and we feel like we can't do anything about it. And so when we finally look at it, it can be filled with all the shame of all the times we knew we needed to stop this habit, or something that this habit has gotten in the way of us doing or getting or being. And so I definitely think there has to be curiosity and compassion, and I think even visualizing the habit we want to change as a younger version of ourselves, right? As the version of ourselves that didn't have the
Mm.
knowledge, the wisdom that we have now, right? And I think we can be compassionate to kids, and seeing those parts of ourselves as little kids so that we can, offer that love and support to, because we now have the knowledge of, we can do something different. And I think that sometimes just can help build, can give us that distance from the problem that we need, when it feels too shameful to look at least that in my practice, I bring in a lot of that kind of work because it can be really hard to look at things that we really feel a lot of shame around.
I love that. I love that you really talked about, it comes down to how we visualize ourselves and giving ourselves that compassion. Realize that isn't something that needs to be shied away, but it's simply a part of the process. And that's something you don't have to necessarily search from somebody else to get, that you can give that compassion to yourself, which I think is such a powerful thing. I think we're so used to searching for compassion outside of ourselves, but we can be that very person that gives that to us, gives us that grace, gives ourselves that compassion that we maybe needed it as a.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we don't feel it's genuine, we can fake it till we make it, right? Like I can act as if, like if it's hard for me to do that for myself, how would I show up for a really good friend who is trying to make this change, right? What things would I say to that person? How would I treat them? What kind of tone of voice would I use with them? And if I can start treating myself that way, right? I may not believe it quite yet for myself, but I'm at least starting to change that behavior and the way I'm approaching the problem, which is going to lead to some different results.
Ooh, yes, I love that. I love that because I really believe that compassion also allows us to find that consistency. Would you say? Because I feel like when I'm more compassionate about myself, I tend to let the obstacles that I'm eventually going to run into. I mean, I know I can't avoid them all, but I know that I can kind of grow through them or go through them, right? And I realize when I enter with compassion, it just seems like the challenges seem to not just ruin me, but I just can pat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's why having an accountability group or doing something in a group, like if I'm trying to change a habit and I'm doing that with other people who are also trying to change that habit, can just be so helpful, because we're like our biggest critic typically. We're the hardest on ourselves. We know ourselves the best. But when we're with other people who are also trying to make the same changes, they're giving us kind of feedback real time. And a lot of times it's more real, it's more true, and it's oftentimes a lot kinder than the way we're talking to ourselves. And so I think just having the supporting container of a group can be really helpful for so many reasons when we're trying to make changes, but certainly with compassion and just grace can be really helpful doing it in a group.
I've truly found power in a group of myself. And I believe like when you come in a group, it's something like you talked about. It's just something so powerful about going through something with other people that just I haven't felt like I had to hide. It's like when you're in a group of people with the same challenges, you naturally just do the same thing. And I feel ourselves in those moments so much of shame, because when you realize that we're all growing through the same thing. And I think about when we're so used to going through it, but I believe that when you come together with a group, you allow yourself to grow through something. And I think that's the most powerful thing I found, is just working with other people and working in a group setting. Is it allows me to just not only realize that the pain that I feel, I'm not the only person going through it, but that we can all grow by bouncing those same feelings off of people. And my head hurt when we were going through the challenge, and somebody's like, "Mine does too." And I'm like, "Okay, great. I the game, right?"
Yeah, the sugar detox for sure. But I think that also the power of a group is that we get to be of service to other people. And when we are serving others, we are not thinking about our own pain. We're not as hyper focused on our own stuff. And so I think it's just also helpful to keep us more objective about what we're doing, because we're getting to focus on someone else and maybe giving them some advice or some tips, maybe things that we really need to hear for ourselves, but just that whole idea of getting to be of service to others.
Yes, so true. Yeah, it definitely does help you realize it. That the mission is bigger than you, and that, like you said, you can become service to others. As you hold on through that hard time, they are empowered to hold on to the hard time as well. And I really, when you talk about replacing our habits with compassion, I think a big thing here is our habits must fit our real life. I think that's a powerful statement in itself, is that making sure our habits are really going to fit with our lives. I think it's so simple to look at other people's habits in a magazine or on Instagram or on social media and think that this is what I have to do to accomplish and to get to where they want to be. And I think there's a big, thing. Yeah, everybody's like, model this person and you'll get there. And I think really when it comes down to, at the end of the day, they must something that worked for them. Not everything's going to really work for you and in your real life, because we don't get to see people's backgrounds, histories, and what they have gone through, or the people that are working behind the scenes that are going to get there. So when it really comes to setting our habits, what do you think when it comes to having those real expectations for ourselves?
Yeah, it reminds me of the difference between a sprint and a marathon race, right? You have the sprint, a sprinting race, like maybe a 400 on a track, right? And, the whole thing you want to do is to put your everything you have into that run, because it's short and the goal is to be as fast as possible, right? And you're using everything that you have to get there. Versus a marathon, where you really have to conserve your energy and really be mindful and strategic about where you're pushing and where you're reserving, because you're running typically a very far distance. And if you're doing a marathon, we're also biking and swimming, right? You're kind of using different resources. So the idea being that if we try to give everything, right, we have to make this one change, we're going to burn ourselves out, right? That person who comes out of the gate in a marathon that's trying to run it like a 400 race is going to burn out pretty quickly, and then they're going to be discouraged and they're going to feel bad about themselves, right? versus the person who trains to conserve their energy, to, give a little when they can, but also knowing when to pull back. And I think we can apply the same thing to changes that, making it realistic is really examining what resources that we have to offer to tackle the problem and also being strategic about it.
Ooh, I love 100% marathon. So true. And as we're seeing people's highlight, we're seeing their sprint, but we're not seeing their endurance race that they have of continuing to show up. And I think that's such a powerful thing, like you said right there, is because many times we look at our goals and the first thing we want to do is sprint there as fast as possible. And then what happens is we find ourselves burnt out, discouraged, and, feeling shame because we burnt ourselves out and we don't feel like we have anything else. But I love that, like, when we approach our goals and our dreams and our with our habits, it's a marathon. Like, you're going to choice to choice, decision to decision. But at the end of the day, one decision isn't going to be the thing that gets you to your goal. And I wish I could say, hey, you're just going to wake up and you're going to do one thing. But really, the one thing you truly, like Molly said, is make that next right choice again, and again.
Yeah. Because even when it comes to weight loss, like so many people want to lose weight, but then there's no plan for how I'm going to keep the weight off, because they're trying to get this goal by running it like a sprint and get there as fast as possible. But there's no follow-up. There's no plan for, okay, now I've lost the weight. What am I going to do to continue, keeping the weight off? Because I don't want to gain all the weight back, and if we think of it like a marathon and, thinking of it as a lifestyle, right? Then we can, okay, I can get a little bit more comfortable losing less weight per week, per month, because I know ultimately I want to sustain this for a really long time.
Whew, I love the word you said there. You said lifestyle. And I think that's the biggest part of when it comes to our goals, the things that we need to really approach them is like Molly said right there. It's a powerful word, lifestyle, that, like we talked about, that one decision. This is a decision I'm going to have to make a choice each and every day. That's really when it comes down, like, it's a lifestyle. This choice is the choice that I'm going to have to make when, things aren't going my way. When I don't feel good, I'm going to have to make this same choice. When people are telling me there's a better option, I'm still going to have to make this same choice. And that's really what a lifestyle is that it's the way I envision myself, but the way I decide to show up for myself each and every day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot of ways we can show up for ourselves, and the one that's going to feel the best is the one that is aligned to our lifestyle that's authentic to us. And I think if we really want to change our lifestyle, we have to really ask ourselves if we feel aligned to that lifestyle, that version of ourselves, because maybe the lifestyle we feel aligned to right now is not super healthy, right? And we may want for ourselves but not feel deserving of it or feeling like it's possible, right? Because I think our lifestyle is a reflection of the way that we express ourselves, right? It's the way that we express our self-concept is through our lifestyle. And so that piece of it being so important, that that piece, you really have to believe that I can be this person, or I'm going to start showing up as this person, right? And then the lifestyle aligns to that, and then all my habits align to that. And it's not something that happens overnight. It's totally in the choices that we make, in alignment with that lifestyle. And then, how do we pivot back when we make choices that don't align with that lifestyle?
Ooh, yes, so true, so true. So I want to share a quote when it comes, just replacing our habits with compassion. I want to share this quote. It really stuck out to me. It said, sustainable change comes from understanding, not punishment. I want to repeat that again. To really think, sustainable change comes from understanding and not punishment. And that, it really stood out to me. It's kind of like what you talked about there. Understanding what lives. Like you said, what understand and the vision of ultimately what our goals are going to lead to. It's having that understanding and not feeling like we got to punish our way to that end result.
Yeah. And I think sometimes using data can be really helpful for that, can because it can feel more like I'm dealing with data versus this is about me and my self-worth, and every decision feels like, it's life or death because it's about, how good I am or how worthy I am. Sometimes if we can just focus on data and see the data changing, that can help us have that distance from, the personalizing each decision that we make. So data meaning, like a Fitbit like this is great, where you can track your steps, you can track your sleep, you can track your heart rate variability. You can kind of track these biomarkers that let us know where we're at, and kind of, you can track them over time to see that progression, and I think that can allow us to have compassion for ourselves just through that data and what the data is showing, because the data is not telling you like, hey, you got 5 hours of sleep last night, you suck. It's telling you, oh, you got 5 hours of sleep last night. This may not be the day to push on your workout. This may be a day where you kind of need to take it easy. And it's like, oh, I don't have to shame myself because I didn't hit that goal, but I can just use that to inform my next best decision. Okay, that's great. And I feel like if we could just do that for ourselves, life would be so much easier. But if we have to rely on a Fitbit or, an Apple Watch or a Ring or a Garmin or whatever you have, I mean, why not use the tools that we have already available to us?
Oh, wow. I love that fact that, really using the data ourselves to this map that we created for ourselves. A tool, like you said, using that tool. It's a simple tool, just, whether it's even just journaling, writing down how I feel. Like you don't even need, if you don't have the technology, you could just start to track like, hey, I ate here, didn't eat here. I slept this many hours this day, didn't sleep this many hours this day. I love how you really talked about not making stuff about how we feel, but looking at the data and respond and realizing how our decisions are dictating our mood. And I think that's such a powerful thing. Like you said, of removing the shame and getting down to the facts. It's awesome. I love that. Guys, I want to leave y'all with a question here. We're talking about, shifting our habits. I want to leave with you get the question. It says, what would shift if I led with compassion instead of criticism? I want to repeat that again. It's just, so as we think about our goals and how we're shifting, and replacing our habits, what would shift if I led with compassion instead of criticism? Do you think that's a good question to ask ourselves, Molly, when it comes to our habits?
Absolutely. I think we could ask that about anything, because I think our critic can just be a big boulder in the middle of our road, that keeps us stuck, that, keeps us in pain. I think it's a great question.
So, hey, guys, we're going to leave y'all. Obviously, when we come into our habits, we realize that we ask a lot of questions here of going to have the answer for yourself. And so we want to leave you here. Just, I figured just some and I want you to ask yourself, what habits show up automatically? I think that's like what habits when you're stressed out, when you are feeling unsure, maybe you're feeling afraid, you're feeling uncomfortable. What habits just naturally show up automatically without you even thinking about it? That's a question I had to really ask myself about. What are my defaults that just naturally pop up?
Yeah, and not just the ones that we want to change, but like also the good ones that we feel really proud of, right? Like the habits that we've, been able to sustain over time, like the good ones too.
Yes, yes, I love that. And like Molly said, the good ones, yeah. And I think a really great way, like we were talking about, when we start to identify some of the habits that are no longer serving the habits that we already do out, and you know that keep a great clarification, like right there's focusing on like not we're just talking about the positive, the positive. We're talking, they both go hand in hand. All right, and this one here, does this support who I am? And I think that's a great question. As we talked about, like Molly, she said, that habits, right? What are the habits that we naturally come into, whether it's positive or negative? But mostly identifying those and identifying, are they supporting who I want to become, or are they holding me back? You think that's another great question? Takeaway there, Molly?
Absolutely. Yeah. Are they in alignment with, who we want to become? And, if we're okay with who we are now, are they in alignment with who we are now? Right. Because maybe we feel like we are the best version of ourselves right now. Not going to be true, but, maybe we feel like we are. But if our habits aren't in line with that version of ourselves, right, it's going to pull us away. So even in inventory of, are my habits in line with the version of myself that, I love now?
I love that. I love that. It's so powerful. Like you said, like you said, we could be feeling that at that top version of ourselves, but I love how you talked about really align with who I want to become. I think that's such a powerful statement. Like you said in the beginning, we're talking about the vision that you have, or your habits in line with the vision of the person you feel like you are, or the person you want to become. And I think another question here is, what's one small shift I can make this week or even today? Like Molly was saying, it's really just about making that next right choice. When you look at your goal, like we were talking about, or your habits, as that guidepost that you're moving towards, are my habits in line with stepping towards, or am I taking that step?
Yeah, absolutely. It's looking at those small little things in our daily life, right? That we can make shifts. And maybe there's nothing you can take towards your ultimate goal, but also, can you remove small things that are going to get in the way and be distractions, right? Like, maybe it's, I spend so much time on my phone on social media, I'm going to just delete the apps off my phone, right? There's so many ways we can be kind of moving that needle, and it's not necessarily like every day that it's like I have to be losing a pound every day, but it could be like, I'm going to pick up a book and read a bit about nutrition today, or learn a bit about fats and carbs and proteins today. There's so many little things we can do today to support our ultimate goal, and it doesn't have to be that big sprint. They're the little small things that are just going to support, and even removing barriers, or bringing in other people that are going to be there as in making these changes. So many little ways we can be moving the needle. And if anyone needs any support in this or guidance, we can provide other examples of how you can take little tiny small steps, and I'm talking like micro steps in that will move the needle for you towards the goal.
I love that. I love how you talk about making those micro steps. Like, kind of like, I think the first, like we talk about, when you're looking to change something, the first thing you want to change, you want to move the mountain. But I love how you really focus on, hey, all you need to do is pick up that little rock and realize eventually, as you keep showing up, that mountain will move. I think that's so powerful in itself. So I'm going to share a quote when it comes to just, you know, initially, awareness is the first habit that changes everything. And I think that's a powerful statement, is like we talked about today, is having the awareness, but most importantly, the go, right?
Say that one more time.
So it says, that the quote is this is the first habit that changes everything. So awareness that, of the direction to go, like you talked about and initially, and, also having that awareness of the things that are no longer serving you, just having that awareness.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to the resolution, right? The decision that I'm going to do something. And that has to come from an awareness that something's not working in my life, right? And I think that's where like the new year resolutions start from, is I've decided, based off of being aware of my life and what's working, what's not working, that I want to make a change, right? I am becoming resolute that I need to make a change or shift in my life. And but not allowing that to just be for January 1st, but throughout my life, that I am allowed to continue to shift and change and want better for myself. And I don't have to wait till the beginning of the year to do it. I can do it March 15th. I can do it July 23rd. I can do it November 5th. It can happen anytime that I decide I am ready to make change.
I love that. I think it's a powerful statement that said it's like you said right there, it's when I decide, and that you have the power to make that decision. I think many of us, as we're ending this holiday season or beginning a new year, we feel like we have to make that change on a certain date or make that decision on a day. But it doesn't have to be just made in one day. It's a decision you make every single day. And I think that's such a powerful statement itself. So I want to leave you guys with 2 closing questions here. Just 2 questions to really just ask yourselves a little bit more clarity here. It says, I want you to write these down if you have to get yourself a little pen and paper. What habits are you strengthening when it comes to, goals? I think it's a good question to ask ourselves, Molly. What habits are we strengthening as we move into this new year?
Yeah. Yeah. What habits and maybe do we need to strengthen, or what habits could use with a little more strengthening?
Yes, yes. I love that. And that second question is, what habit are you releasing with grace?
Yeah. Yep. And not just physical habits, mental habits, right? Emotional habits. Like maybe I'm going to be less angry when I'm driving to work, right?
Yeah, I love that. But I love like where it's like not just physical, because I think that's what really happens when we set our goals for the year, right? The first thing is usually but I love how I talked about emotionally, mentally, really not just surface level. Thinking your goals have to be surface level. That is really start each every area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, here, you guys. Well, man, I first off just want to say thank you so much, Molly, for the knowledge that you share with us today. Any closing comments, anything that you would want to leave the listeners with today? I know I want you to also share the way that people can work with you today. She has an amazing Restart program, which I've taken myself, and it's amazing. But I also want to share, if anything you want to leave the listeners with, anything else, I'd love for you to do that.
Yeah. I mean, don't feel pressured, like Sam said, that the change has to happen January 1st, but maybe just taking inventory of your life, of what's not working, right? And just getting a broad scope of what is not working in my life, right? Whether if it's finances aren't working, if it's a relationship that's not working, if it's a way that you're showing up in a certain relationship, whatever it is, right? Just taking inventory, and looking at the past year, right? And you can even bring up your old calendar, or if you keep like a planner, or even looking through your pictures just to kind of jog your memory of the year, and just going through and being like, what isn't working for me anymore, right? What is something that I do want to leave behind? And then that can kind of feed into, what habits need to change and all of that. But just that awareness, you can start at any point. It doesn't mean you have to take action on it. You may go through your entire year and be like, I'm super happy with where I'm at, right? And then it's like, okay, well, what habits do I want to keep up for the next year so I can have an exactly same or better year that I had this year? But just really today, being willing to look at yourself, being able to look at your life with compassion, just to kind of see where you're at.
I love that right there. Powerful in itself. So, you guys, we're not going to leave you empty-handed. I actually made a handout for you guys. I'm going to shoot that down in the comment section. You'll see it under this post. It's going to be a download. Be able to identify 3 habits that you feel strong in, 3 habits you want to change, and then define and clarify why these habits are going to serve me, and why these habits are no longer going to serve me. I want to give you guys some takeaways today as well. But I also want to have Molly talk about her restart program she's going to be having starting in January.
Yeah, well, talking about habits and talking about the support of a group, I have this program called Restart, and it's a 5-week nutrition slash education slash sugar detox program, which can help in so many different ways for participants. So the group is about 6 to 8 participants. We meet weekly. It'll be on a Friday morning this time, starting in mid-January. And we'll meet for 5 Fridays in a row. And only 3 of those weeks you're actually doing the sugar detox. But the benefits of this can be anywhere from weight loss to hormone support to, getting rid of acne, getting rid of bloating, helping with bowel movements. I mean, so many things we don't realize are attached to sugar and our diet. And if you are just starting out wanting to get healthier or wanting to change your diet or wanting to make some healthy habits, this is just a great foundational group and program to be a part of. You're going to learn about digestion. You're going to learn about fats. You're going to learn about what sugar really does to your body. You're going to learn about blood sugar regulation, all while you are in a group of like-minded people who are also trying to make the same change. And I think there's just something so powerful of doing this in a group. You have accountability, you have support, you have resources. I could talk all day about all these different topics, but really this is a container where you can be starting to make some really important changes. And this could just be the beginning, kind of catalyst of a lifestyle change. So I'm super excited to be launching this again in January, and we'll have our link so that if anyone's interested in learning more, you can join. I'm also offering a 50% discount right now on the first 5 people who sign up. So this program is normally $250 for 5 weeks, and I'm half off, so it's $125 for 5 weeks. So super great. It's a low financial kind of investment for a huge gain. Like I did this with Sam at the same time, and we both just had so many different beneficial results from it. For me, a lot of it was just energy and getting better quality of sleep. Also just helping with bloating and inflammation. And I know for Sam, he had some great benefits too.
Yes, you guys, man, this is a game-changing opportunity for me. As somebody who's been in the wellness time, it was that missing personal journey. You never learned too much about nutrition, and it just taught me how to truly fuel my body. And man, I mean, so many things that I was going through, I didn't know was linked to sugar. And yeah, it's been a game changer for me. So the fact that we went through it as a group was even better. So I know that it'll change your life. So I hope you take advantage of that. I'm gonna make sure this link is under this episode. So you're gonna see the link to that Molly's Restart program. You're just gonna see the link for the downloadable sheet to establish your habits. But you guys, I want you to realize that, like Molly said today, that it's time to start to envision yourself as the person you want to become. But most importantly, not just envisioning that person, but taking that step in the direction of that person, realizing that is not only a decision you get to make today, but that's an action you get to make. And I think that's the most powerful thing I really want you to leave here with is you have the power to change your life, but most importantly, that you don't have to wait.
Yep. Just one small step can move that needle today.
All right. Make sure you follow Molly. She's on Instagram at Molly Roth Nutrition. I am at Real Success with Sam. So please feel free to reach out to us on any of those social platforms down under here. We'll reach out to you guys. There's many ways to work with each and every one of us, but we want to make sure we're pointing you guys in the right direction. But if anything, shout out to Molly Roth for dropping some golden nuggets today, you guys. Wow, that is awesome. Till next time. Episode will come out, but I'm super thankful for you guys. You listen for a minute or a second. Make sure you follow Molly at Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Molly Roth Nutrition.
Yep.
All right, perfect, you guys. All right, friends, y'all take care.